Hello and welcome back to the Spectrum. Today we're joined here by me, Darren.
Me, Adi. I'm Ali.
I'm Mustafa.
I'm Shuaib.
I'm Yusuf.
I'm Schlatte.
And today we're going to be discussing maybe the roles of influencers on masculinity in the modern day. So, what do you guys think about the big manosphere influencers, I suppose, online these days?
I think one of the examples we've had in recent times, I think you'd have to say is Andrew Tate. A very controversial figure, a very polarizing figure. I just want to get you guys' opinions on that just before we start.
First, I think the last year has been it's been quite eventful in terms of influencers. I think a lot of people have risen up. Some people got cancelled in the end, but I think the last year in particular has been when most of this stuff is still happening. So I'm interested to hear what everyone thinks.
I think Andrew Tate gets a lot of credit from the fact that I don't think there are many positive male influences currently, and I think his message, whilst there's obviously a lot of negativity, the kind of positive elements really emphasised by how kind of fervently he pushes for them, and I feel like that's why he's such a kind of big male influencer. But what are you guys' opinions on that kind of gap of male influence, and who should fit, whose role is it to fill?
Well, I kind of disagree with what he said. I'd say that there are plenty of male influencers that you find on social media on a daily basis. Like you're scrolling around and you see all these people that are encouraging you to channel what you love and channel what you desire into a hobby or whatever it be. Maybe gym, you see those gym TikToks, or you see music or arts or creativity. There's plenty of, I'd say, creators online and social media influencers that do encourage you to pick up a hobby, pick up activity, just do things that benefit you.
Do you not think those influencers are a bit niche though?
Yes, they are niche, but they get you say that they get the job done. Because everybody has their own taste, and you see things like I said before, gym. That's a very popular thing amongst a lot of people, and a lot of people feel like that they want to go down there. Yes, it may be niche, but it's a good thing to do. You can't deny the fact that it's something that you should be tending towards, whether it be that or whether it be all the music, creativity, arts, whatever it may be. Yes, they can be niche, but I'd say that they are good things overall. You can't disregard them.
I disagree.
I think holistically there's a lack of.
Yeah, because even though someone's quote unquote an influencer because they post content on social media, it doesn't actually mean they have an influence on people. I think the reason Andrew Tate has an influence on people is because of how kind of polarizing he is as a person, and so he has an influence. Whereas just because, for example, someone posts a video of them in the gym, it doesn't mean they've got an influence on you.
So you think that in order to have an influence on someone, you need to have strong feeling, portray strong feelings online, whatever it may be, but you have to portray strong sense of that.
I think in that kind of red pill space, that's the term for it, right? That Andrew Tate is kind of present in. I think you do. I think you need to be polarizing and kind of entertaining, I guess, to some degree with how you present your ideas.
I think that's just to do with his outreach, because if he doesn't say polarizing stuff, controversial stuff, he's not really going to make it to the news. So
or have an influence.
Reach enough people. So it's partially polarizing.
I think that Andrew Tate, I'm just going to have him as the male influencer because he's the most popular. He was in the top 10 most Googled people in 2022. And I think that he has allowed for other influencers to, ride this wave that he's been riding. And I think that, for example, I take what Shuaib was saying about gym. I think the reason why there's been a rise in all these videos is because of someone like him who's been using platforms like TikTok to promote this. And I think that in this way, a lot of good things can be promoted, but I think that a lot of bad things can be promoted as well.
It's to do with the swiftness of how things communicate, because things can go from person to person much quicker now with those short form media platforms like TikTok and whatnot than ever before, really. So ideas, whether good or bad, they're spread a lot quicker. So I think that's
I think you can't separate this kind of influencer from the medium, because this kind of social media, they are created so that being polarizing and being shocking is successful. The whole algorithm, the whole design of the platform is that you have to get interest within seconds. where you do that by being shocking, by being controversial. I mean, maybe there are plenty of positive influences, but they don't have the same kind of influence because of the structure of the platform. I think it is very social media specific.
I just have a question for you about where do you think we should get our influences from in kind of the media model? Good question. Yeah.
Because I know my answer.
Okay. Do you want to, what mistakes do you want to
Okay,
give us?
just to give you some time. I think, whilst Andrew Tate says certain stuff that obviously a lot of people won't agree with, there are things that he portrays, and that's why, young men relate to that. I'm not going to say that he's the best example because there are others, and that's why I'm talking about the people that I would take my opinions from, or my kind of advice, mindset, stuff like that, would be other people. Like, for me, I know one example is Habib, because I think he's a really good influence, because all he talks about is devotion and having that mindset of always working and being grateful. Because I think there's loads of people like him out there that don't specifically, they aren't termed influencers, they aren't termed like people who have those kind of polarizing opinions, but they do perpetrate a good narrative, especially for young men.
I think there's a way of portraying that mindset and giving that sense of feeling to the younger generations without coming across all that controversy and things you see online. So yeah, Khabib's a good example of that.
Yeah. Are there any other positive male figures online, I suppose, and when it comes to money? For me, I think of Ali Bali.
The UFC fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Some people say Jordan Peterson as well. That's sort of like a critical thing for them.
Yeah, but he also has a lot of opposition as well.
Yeah, he has his controversy attached to it.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Dwayne Johnson.
So that's sort of just celebrity.
Yeah, but his whole brand is based off having a good mentality, positive
Yeah,
mentality.
I don't think I've ever seen a TikTok which is The Rock telling me to like make my bed or something.
No, the only TikTok I've seen on that kind of topic is where he's directly quoting Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
So, again, it just brings it back to the whole polarizing idea.
Yeah, for me, I think like a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, influencers or people that I look up for motivation would be athletes like Ronaldo or like someone big like the Rock. I think now we have this, because of the rise of TikTok, we have this form of media where if people by shouting at you, I guess you're kind of drawn into that, and it's not just look and see or what's on their Instagram or something like that. It's more like they're just shouting at me now, and I think that, like Shry was saying, controversy. I think controversy sells, and I think that's the reason why there's been such a rise of stars like Andrew Tate and like Paul Breach, for example. I think that it's quite damaging.
You mentioned years ago you looked at influences, and that made me think about kind of where I got my motivation from when I was younger. And I definitely think get it from social media. So maybe social media kind of makes us have this reliance on other people to motivate us, and that shouldn't be how we live as humans. We shouldn't rely on other people to tell us what to do.
Yeah, naturally, you would hope for your father figure in your life to be the male role model that you look up to.
Even like the word male role model, like I don't think that actually means, it doesn't mean much, because I could get the exact same influence, I think, from my mum.
Yeah.
And she probably had a bigger influence.
I do think it's a difference in experience.
Yeah.
Remember, what's the male role model give you?
Because a male role model is once a teenage boy that knows can relate compared to your mom. Like I'm sure that like mothers can do like an adequate job or near adequate. But I think there's just something personalised about having someone who used to be in your position in terms of a male role model.
I think a good way of putting it is like your mom will have insight, but your father will have like the ability, experience.
No, I was just going to say your question is interesting and I have no answer to it. Because I think it's interesting because you're saying, where should we look for influence? Like, well, you live in this completely different space, like, risk of sounding terribly old. Social media didn't exist when I was raised. We didn't have this problem. This wasn't an issue. Our role models were people around us in real life /TV, but it's not really the same. So I think the best you can do is be really mindful about what you're consuming and how. And you can curate your social media, but I think it is actually a lot of effort to do that properly, because as you said, it's shouting at you all the time, and it's trying to give you this polarizing content, but really maybe a positive influence is something uncontroversial. if you're talking about positive role models, what values are you talking about? I mean, you can answer that if you want or not, but those values, I would imagine, are not controversial, argumentative things. They are sort of much more gentle, longer-term values that you might want to embody in life, and that is just completely in opposition to what social media stands for.
Yeah. I think one thing, as much as Tate is quite controversial, I think he has raised like a very important aspect in terms of things like control from the government and things like that. Because people are quite quick to dismiss it, but if we were to take an ounce of it to be true, and if there was some sort of like wider framework that controls us, then I think it's quite interesting that I think a lot more people are picking up on that now. And for example, like, you know, the voice notes that came out by Vice, like people a week later, I think they analysed the voice notes and found that the like top note of the voice note was missing or something, which would suggest it's been fabricated. But over that whole week, people sort of like jumped on that. So it's sort of a difficult position where, because we're so far away from all of it, it's really, really hard to pick who you want to believe and who not to believe. Because beforehand, people would have thought Vice would be a great place to get your news from. But then you find something like that, it makes you doubt. It makes you doubt as well. Before, people thought Tate was a great place to get advice from, and then all of these court things came up, and then you start to doubt that really heavily.
No, we were talking about this before actually, about the idea of perpetrating media. Obviously, he calls it the matrix, and other people have different terms for it. But the idea of a perpetrating narrative, it's been like, if we look throughout history, that has been an idea that's been prevalent. But it's just now that we're in the moment living it, we don't think that that's, you know, even remotely possible. And you tend to, a lot of skepticism comes with people who oppose that narrative. And it happens in a lot of fields. I was listening to, I don't know if you've heard of him, Graham Hancock, and he provides alternative ideas on history, but he gets shut down at loads of events, and his reputation is tarnished. So it's like kind of an arrogance within ourselves to think that just because we're in a modern world that we think is the most advanced, that there is no controlling force whatsoever. So I think there's definitely an element of that in social media, and also in just the general media especially.
Yeah, I think the whole woke movement thing it shoots himself in the foot quite a lot in terms of like jumping and cancelling a lot of things, but when you look back on it, they're essentially sometimes doing the same thing they accuse other people of doing, which is wanting to be in control of everything, if that makes sense. And like them being the ones who can say what cannot be said, and they sort of just mask under like freedom and all these liberties and things like that.
It is quite interesting how political it is in these scenarios, because you think when we talk about positive influences, you don't expect to talk about such controversial things. You expect to talk about like, you know, respect, honour, dignity, rather than, and it seems to me at least that lots of big influences online do have quite strong political views, and it does like bleed into what they say and their advice.
I think, yeah, I guess that kind of goes on to help prove the fact that we shouldn't be getting role models from the media, because it's so kind of like dramatised and so made to be over the top, when in reality your moral should just come from you seeing the world, you observing the world and thinking kind of what's best and what's right. We shouldn't have to rely on people and what they say and what they think to kind of determine who we are as people.
But I think it's inevitable that we end up relying on something.
I think there'll be like beneficial aspects. Like having a role model, it's not completely taking everything they say. I doubt the like teenagers commenting on Tate's TikToks. I doubt they're going out and living 100% happy lives. I think to be honest, quite a lot of them are just there for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years the fun of it dies down and Tate dies down, and then there's a new Tate, and then we all start talking about him.
Yeah, I think it's, when it comes to Tate, I think it's dangerous how, I think it's very obviously that he's playing a character.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and a lot of his supporters will recognise that. But equally, there'll be a lot of supporters that don't realise it's a joke and take his thing at face value. And I think we talked about this before at some point, where students in younger years, they saw Tate as being like comical, rather than seeing like the danger of some of his views. And it is quite interesting how age plays a role in maturity festivals.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with schools coming out and doing lessons on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also schools, like, there was actually, I don't know how true this is, but I've seen online where apparently there was a school which imposed sanctions for the mention or the reiteration it's like that's policing people's speech, which
I think schools can teach fake news like 100%. They can teach like where to get good sources from. They can teach how to avoid misogyny and the dangers of misogyny. But I think with it being that specific, I think it does sort of infringe. I don't think schools should be that intrusive in terms of how they do it.
Schools do have a legal obligation to educate their students on this kind of thing because, not because, you know, listen to whatever you want, read whatever you want, but a lot of what Andrew Tate does is extremism. Again, it starts as funny and a joke, and I do understand that, but like that kind of very heavy messaging, you start listening to that when you're 13, it is extremism, it's pushing people towards extreme views. So I would say that violent misogyny is extremism, right? That is the legal reason why schools do it. I take your point of view, absolutely, but I think schools / the government are in a difficult position because there's a legal requirement to address this kind of thing.
Yeah, I was just adding on to that. I was thinking that if you're expelling schools from sort of like teaching these stuff, then of course, where else do they fall back onto? They fall back onto themselves, and like, where do they get these sources from? Of course, then social media plays a huge role in this. If you exclude our parental roles in this, if you look at the role of social media here, then that's when it starts getting a bit dangerous. If you don't expect schools to teach it in like a sophisticated manner, then you can easily be left open to the susceptibility of social media.
That's true, but then it's sort of like, what's next? Like, where do you draw a line of what schools can now come and teach? Because if schools kept taking every like specific thing, I totally agree with the whole, they have the obligation to do it, but I think once you let schools and the government do it once, when like for in the next generation when views look so different, then maybe schools could do it, and schools would be able to do it again and again. And I think there's a sort of slippery slope to that. So I guess it depends if the line's drawn, it's just like a one circumstance where it's been done. But I think it can, there's a risk of it becoming really intrusive.
I think that this is a circumstance where it has to be done because the school, they hold this responsibility because Andrew Tate is polarising for many people our age and especially in our teenage years. So I think that for a lot of people, school is the place where where they find their role models, where they don't have parental roles to fall back on. So I think that it's the responsibility of the school, they have this duty of care to educate, all the students what they're seeing online. And I think that, like you said before, that if we do it once, we're going to have to keep doing it again. But I think this is a case where the school has to, I wouldn't say intervene, I'd say they have to educate. And I think if something else big like this happens, the school has a responsibility to educate.
I'd be interested in how they put together the resources. So I think talking to even a few teachers at the school, their experience of Take compared to like what I've seen on TikTok has been like quite different. Some teachers were completely unaware. So I guess it would be interesting what they're actually teaching.
I mean, it's not bad.
No, that's right.
We've only talked about Tate outside of our BBC session, but we get to choose the topic.
I mean, there's quite a lot of PDT material which would link to it and which will inevitably, the conversation will inevitably go there. But no, I mean, it's not formal material. I mean, let's also think, in mixed schools or in girls' schools, and, girls are quite, I can't speak for all girls, but it's quite scary, in this kind of stuff, and you hear this kind of language. You do have to offer the alternative point of view, especially because, and I don't know, because I'm not on your TikTok. I can never see TikTok like you can. That was not possible. That's not the point of TikTok, right? So it's very, very difficult to know what do young men like you see and how to respond to that. As you say, some of us never seen this stuff before and don't want to. But equally, we have a duty of care and a duty to educate young people. It's very, very, really, really difficult space to try and get right.
Sorry,
Can I just
say,
are you okay to carry on?
Surely if people kind of are aging younger, that's susceptible to extremism and the government and schools have a duty to care. Surely the best way to go forward is just to ban that content entirely and to ban social media to some degree, or put really heavy restrictions on them.
It's not possible.
But how do you do that?
You can't talk about it. That's just censorship.
schools. It's not necessarily censorship. But no, it is. But it's to young people. It's for their own good.
So you're not allowed an opinion to that.
No, it's not an opinion. You're not allowed to see extremism to some degree.
Yeah,
Up until you.
Who decides what is extremism and what isn't
That's the
extremism?
tough thing. Who's going to tell? Because you said because it's for their own good, but who's determining that?
The person drawing the line has to have such a strong moral compass
Yeah.
that it's able to influence literally everyone. Because it is going to end up influencing everyone that comes into contact with what is decided. So if you draw the line saying that this person is an extremist, this person is not.
I meant kind of like social media just full stop.
Oh,
Like everything.
Ban
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah, just ban it. Yeah, I mean, there's more.
I think it's
I think
personally
think a ban on social media would be good.
Okay.
It's like 18.
But I think
At
it's
least 16.
Yeah. Like TikTok is saying you're not allowed to use the account. Everyone knows there are like 6-year-olds
Yeah.
account on the app using most random things. But like we see it as like really innocent. We don't realize that what we're exposed to will also be what they're exposed to.
And I mean, even recently, me and Andy go past the coroner's court on the bus, and there was this court case where this girl committed suicide as a result of instructions to commit suicide she received off of Pinterest. And it's like, people might argue, oh, social media allows people to communicate, it allows people to share ideas, but it also can lead to like really, really harmful stuff. And surely, kind of, the best thing to do is just to get rid of it.
So where do you think like people will source their sorts of ideas and their individuality from without social media? I don't think that plays a big role nowadays, like building their own mindset. Even that positive mindset we talked about earlier, how like they won't be able to access that.
Yeah, there was no social media 50 years ago, and throughout time people have been able to become people and have ideas and have principles without social media. We just rely on social media now.
But that consequence you were saying about social media, that's just a byproduct of the internet in general. When you have something, it's very hard to completely abolish it. Like,
I mean that's a part of it.
There's always going to be people working around.
I have a question for people who disagree with Tate. So, even though you disagree with Andrew Tate, would you still defend his right to say, like, express himself, just as like a general statement?
That's all free speech.
That's just free speech. It's to the extent where
I don't know if it is a free speech debate because it always ends up being a free speech debate, but I mean, I would say that I agree with his right to, you can publish material, but saying violently misogynistic things is a crime. So I think that the social media platforms should take down any content that includes that kind of material. And they have policies that say they will and they just don't do it. So like, I'm not saying, I am obviously against Andrew Tate, what a surprise. But I'm not saying he shouldn't be on TikTok. That's not the issue. The issue is that he's being allowed to produce things that are really dangerous. Not everything he does is dangerous, but there are dangerous things, and those things shouldn't be allowed to remain online. And that, I think, is the scary thing, because these social media platforms, in theory, have duties of care too. And in theory, they should take down, certain material, but they just don't do it. And they allow people like Andrew Tate to manipulate algorithms, etc., etc.
So is the blame also, would you say, on TikTok, or do you think Tate?
Tate should be saying bad things in the first place, but then again.
TikTok, I'd say.
I think TikTok too.
Because there's, people all over the place with all kinds of opinions and all kinds of, you can't blame those individuals. They can have whatever thoughts they want to have, but I think TikTok actually has quite lax laws about these things, if I'm correct in saying. I think Instagram and things are quite a lot tighter. Not that they enforce it either. That would be my
It's like the medium that you mentioned earlier, with TikTok being like a powerful medium. I think there's those ideas of doomsday scrolling. Once you see one idea, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going.
That's the definition of it.
Yeah, it just has that negative effect.
So once again, we ended up another free speech lesson. But yeah, it's been really insightful. I think it was quite valuable to have a different perspective, not just teenage boys, on this discussion. So thank you very much for joining us, and hope we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Jingle.
Jingle.